everybody. Welcome to the Training, Learning, and Development community. Happy Wednesday to you out there. We have a nice, this is sort of a later broadcast that we're doing today. I know it's like 3 p.m. here on the West Coast. I'm sure it's later for you folks out there. Let's see who's in. Oh, Quetzal is here, and Lisa Crockett, Kristen Beal, Elena, Chris. Great to have you here today. We are talking with Bridget Manley, who is an instructional designer, has her own company. I think was it with your husband, Ascendant Training and Design?
Ascendant Design and Training. Yeah.
Design and Training. Sorry.
It's okay.
And I've got a group of questions to ask Bridget. We're going to just talk about her background in L&D. Looks like she's already had some really interesting experiences. I think that's kind of the case with everybody that comes onto this broadcast. I mean, last one we had with former NASA instructional designer, just all kinds of different things. So if any of you have questions that you want to add into the Ask a Question area, just go to the bottom of the screen, click in there, just add your questions. It'll also prompt you if you want to add it as a question in the chat area too. So yes, Lisa, we are rocket scientists. So yeah. All right, Bridget, thanks for doing this today. I'm really looking forward to having the conversation with you. And yeah, we just have a bunch of questions. We'll just start out, get right into it. Where did it all start? Where did your journey into L&D begin?
That's a good question. I probably say it probably started in earnest in 2016. I was a freelance writer at that point, doing mostly journalism and writing for trade magazines in the cannabis industry, which was still very new at the time. And the client I was working for, he also did instructional design, and he was doing training for bud tenders, or those are the people who work in dispensaries and actually, sell you products. And so he said, "Hey, I know you're a writer. Can you write a storyboard?" And I'm like, "I don't know what that is, but it sounds like fun." And so I ended up writing, free storyboards for just basic bud tender training. So it was all about like customer service, compliance, things like that. And I really enjoyed it because it helped me actually apply my background, which was English, of course. I started out as an English major, but I also had an emphasis in secondary education. So I got to use some of my education background in a way that I had never used before. And at that time, I didn't even know an instructional designer was a thing. But I was like, I really like this. I would like to keep doing this if I can. So that was my first project, and I gradually started kind of falling more into it as I went along.
So how did that journalism background help you with what you're doing now as an instructional designer?
Yeah. When I was a journalist, kind of a big part of my job was just falling headfirst into something I knew nothing about and figuring it out very quickly, and then basically teaching it to somebody else. And as an instructional designer, that's a lot of my daily work too, where I'm, falling headfirst into something I don't know, whether it's somebody's workflow or a specific type of software or a specific management concept, figuring it out, talking to people who know, doing my own research, and then turning that around and teaching other people how to do that thing. So it really gave me a lot of skill talking to subject matter experts. Of course, a lot of being a journalist is talking to sources and extracting information from them while also trying to manage their knowledge so you don't flood the reader, or in this case, the learner, with a lot of things that may not be relevant to their work. Mm-hmm. So kind of walking that line. Yeah, that was a big part of it.
And so you started doing curriculum management, or what was it? Yeah, curriculum management for Clear Cannabis Incorporated. Now, that particular, so we haven't had anybody from the cannabis industry on TLDC that I know of anyway. I live in Northern California, so the cannabis industry is I have dispensaries everywhere around me in the small town that I live in here in Northern California. But creating curriculum, what types of things were you having to pull together when you were building that stuff?
Yeah, a lot of it was compliance training, since cannabis is probably one of the more heavily regulated industries in the U.S. right now. So a lot of it was compliance, specifically to state regulations, and because of course it's not legal federally, every state has its own regulations. So a lot of it was figuring out what is legal in one state versus another. And the company I worked for, they licensed intellectual property to cannabis-infused product manufacturers.
Mhm.
So a lot of my work was also creating training around those actual products. In this case, it was mostly like, vape pens and such that were infused with cannabis distillate. So it was talking about the product specs, how to use it, questions customers ask. A lot of it was, sales training. But some of it was also manufacturing training as well in terms of the specs to manufacture this product. And that was actually a lot of fun. I really enjoyed kind of seeing how the sausage is made, as it were, and seeing all the steps that go into, taking cannabis flower and, distilling it down to its essence and then putting that into a product. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, like Lisa says, that must have been fascinating. It does sound interesting to me too. And do you still do any work in that industry now?
I do kind of more, kind of a step back from that instead of training on actual products. My main thing right now is helping companies um, train on software for their clientele, or excuse me, for their employees. So a lot of it is like Teams training or Salesforce, but kind of more like the internal management of those companies. Yeah.
I see. Interesting. It just because that seems like it would be a pretty, I don't know, interesting niche to sort of be in. I don't know of any, I've just never seen anybody else doing instructional design for the cannabis industry. And it's like, I don't know if you're it, but it could be.
I
That's
don't know. I
amazing.
don't see many of me out there. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. I mean, and just to clarify, actually, my biggest client now is the company I used to work with before.
Okay.
And they're great, great clients to work with. So it's kind of a continuity kind of thing. But yeah, most of it is just now just software training.
Excellent. So really got into L&D. You started out as a journalist, English major, but then, you have that background in education as well. What was it? What was it? What was the thing that you liked the most about being in this, in this space?
Yeah, I think for me right now, and of course it kind of changes, I think, the more you get into it. But right now, I like building stuff. I like making say like e-learning modules or videos or job aids and just being alone in my little room and just kind of listening to my music and just being in the zone and building something.
Mhm.
That's been one of my favorite parts. But I also like actually going out and talking to learners as well.
Mhm.
One of the things I did before as a curriculum manager was I would actually, go and interview some of the users who would be using, the basically the training that we would be giving them. One of the biggest trainings we did was on a software compliance platform,
Mhm.
and talking to them about how this software integrates with their daily life and what are some of the tips and tricks, what are things you look out for, and just seeing the workflow and seeing how people do their work and kind of being in that environment. Of course, cannabis is something I'm really not familiar with. I mean, it's not legal in my state. I was never really in that subculture, but it was fascinating to go and talk to people who do this for a living and just see how see how the culture is different and see how they talk and think differently. It was really a lot of fun.
That's great. And then also you've kind of got the headphone gamer headset going, so you've obviously got some mojo there. So is like e-learning your favorite thing, or like sort of are you more inclined to do the development stuff, or what is it that you really like to do?
At this point, it's probably e-learning. Yeah, I mean, more like the development, actually, kind of, like getting in the back end and solving problems. The thing that drive other people crazy, like in Storyline or Captivate. I mean, they still drive me crazy, but I love it. It's weird. My dad used to be a mechanic, and kind of on his own time, and he would always complain about what wasn't working, but he kept doing it. So you could tell that he loved it, and it's kind of the same thing with me. Like sometimes it drives me nuts, but I really enjoy it.
And your developer platform of choice?
I would have to say right now it would be Articulate Storyline. I
Hmm.
think that's the best one I've used so far.
Yeah. What other ones have you used?
I've used Captivate. Captivate's
Mhm.
kind of a different animal. It takes a little bit of extra time and patience, but you can get the same thing done.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Vanessa's in here. She's saying storyline be driving me crazy lately. I hear that a lot from people.
Yeah.
Especially lately. I don't know if there was like a new release or something, but for some reason it feels like storyline has been a little aggravating to a lot of folks out there. So that's sort of interesting to me.
Permanent beta, everything's
Yeah.
always changing.
Yeah. So anything that you wish you had known when you had started out your career, now that you're like a legit instructional designer, anything that you'd like tell yourself, whatever it was, how long ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think the main thing I would tell myself would have been to get involved with a community like this of
Mm,
like-minded practitioners. When I started out, I was completely like, lone wolf mentality. I'm on my own. I'm figuring it out, which was fine. But as I'm starting to actually, um, you know, get connected with communities in the industry, I'm realizing how much I've learned and how much that's accelerated my career.
yeah.
And I think if I had done that a little earlier, I probably would have moved, quite a bit farther than I did. But
Yeah.
live and learn,
Yeah.
right?
No, I totally agree. And just sort of a side thing, one of the things I think that is important about participating in communities, it also takes you away from participating in sort of useless activity, right?
Mhm.
Of like doom scrolling or doing things that just are not healthy for you as
Yes.
as a human individual. So if you're just stayed focused on more of your professional development, your career, like stay there, just get off of Twitter. I think you'll probably do a lot better. No, that's
This is
great.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any kind of projects that you're working on right now that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I'm working on some training for Microsoft Teams. So I'm learning all about Teams and the
Mm,
Microsoft infrastructure and kind of how that ties into that. So that's been kind of, I don't know, I guess you call it like an unofficial master's degree in that in Microsoft.
mhm.
But that's been a lot of fun. And with that, I'm doing mostly, basically like screen share videos and job aids. So it's very like faster development, not necessarily e-learning, but I'm learning a lot about basically like video editing and design. I'm getting into Shotcut and OBS Studio, which are both open source tools that I really am, getting a lot of value out of right now.
What's the
But
first?
yeah,
What, did you say Shotcut?
Shotcut, yeah, it's basically an open source alternative to Adobe Premiere Pro. It's
Ooh.
very simple, but if you are new to video editing like I am, I think you get a lot of value out of it just because you don't get overwhelmed with all the things. It's just very basic.
Right. It's kind of like I just cannot do Premiere as long as I have Camtasia available to me. I just like stick with that versus Premiere. Even though I've done a couple projects in Premiere, it's just the simplicity of Camtasia is what I just need to get stuff done. So I
Yeah.
go back to that regularly. That's great. So
Yeah.
wait, why are you working with these projects? Is there a particular are you working on something using all of these things like Teams and Shotput and OBS?
Yeah, actually, I'm using Shotcut and OBS to create training for Microsoft Teams. So
Ah,
basically, helping a company, train their employees on how to use Microsoft Teams. Which it sounds simple, but Teams is one of those platforms where it's open ended. You can do anything. It's a bug and a feature. So a lot of it is, training people on how it works in their organization and giving people a clear path for this is the best way to do ABC.
did you have any familiarity with Teams prior?
A little bit. My husband and I use it in our company, but
Mhm.
I'm definitely learning a lot more now that that
Right.
I'm creating training for somebody else.
Yeah. And isn't that great? Because you're going to be, I mean, that's like some professional development right there, being able to study about the tools and actually implement them into your own systems. I think that's one of the big benefits of working on projects like that. That's great.
Yeah.
Um, so how about a project that you're especially proud of that you might be able to share with us?
Yeah. I would say it was probably like my first real big uh, contract. It was basically subcontracting, and I was, doing storyboards. It was for hospitals that were applying a new strategy for reducing patient harm. It's called the high reliability organizing, and it's a concept. It's basically a whole philosophy of management that comes out of high risk industries like aviation and nuclear power plants. And it's all about how you think about your work and your life and how you notice new or kind of subtle nuances that might alert you to larger problems down the road. So it was a pretty big project. It was about, I don't know, 5 or 6 courses. But I learned a lot about high reliability organizing,
Mhm.
which I really find fascinating. And it was my first really big build. I was really proud of what I was able to do, specifically in finding ways to have practitioners apply what they learned and reflect on how these principles apply to their daily life.
Mhm. What was it built on top of? Can you tell us?
I'm actually not sure. I was just doing the storyboard, so I was very,
Um,
very far into the design. I didn't do any of the development, but I'm assuming it was something like maybe Captivate or Storyline. I'm not quite sure, but it was definitely e-learning.
Love it. So, ooh, I love the mug. I just saw big,
Thank you.
saw big Hulk and Captain America pop up there, and I'm like, hey,
Yes.
yeah, there you go. You are a geek.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, cool. So, and your professional development, is there any particular, like, how do you stay on top of the latest and greatest and the things that you need to know?
Yeah, to be honest, that's one probably like, that's probably one of my, biggest areas of weakness right now. I mean, I get so stuck in just the daily grind that I need to remind myself to step back and like see what's going on. I do say though that like, communities like this and like on Slack really help me, keep up with what other people are talking about and, what are some of the new problems people are, people are solving.
Mhm.
I've definitely got a backlog of books I want to read and webinars I want to go to. So that's probably going to be one of the things as I start, kind of stabilizing as a business owner, being able to set aside more time for that kind of development.
Mhm, mhm. Do you ever do the conference thing?
I haven't yet. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I went to the accessibility conference you guys hosted last year, which was amazing.
Mhm,
And I've done a couple other virtual conferences, but I haven't actually gone to an in-person one yet.
mhm.
So it's on my list.
Yeah. No, they're a lot of fun, and it's where I started from, so it's sort of strange not having it, but, at some point, I think we were talking a little bit about that in the green room. So, how about this one? This is one of my favorite questions, but what is something that you do for work that is really challenging for you?
Yeah, I think for me right now it's project management. It's
Mhm,
having all the pieces lined out, making sure everyone is informed about what's due when, what needs reviewed, what's in progress. It's something I am still working on. I'm still developing tools and strategies and mindsets for managing that. Um, I have a little bit of experience with that in my journalism background. I was once tasked with editing basically a big magazine that our newspaper put out every year, and it kind of ate my lunch for the first half of the project. But towards the end, I started developing systems and processes for managing it. I'm kind of in that stage now with instructional design, like what works for me and how do I track this.
wow, that's great. And if there is, like, sort of one thing that you would just, if you could just do all the time, one part of your job that you could do all the time, what would that be?
That's a good question. I think it would be like, building e-learning at this point,
Mhm.
really. I just like solving problems. I like getting in there and basically with the triggers and getting into the back end and seeing how it works and testing it. I just get to, again, sit alone in my room and just have my headphones on and listen to my music. And I can do that for, hours at a time.
That's great. Is there anything like lately that you've been using that, well, you mentioned Shotcut, um, and then I think most folks in the audience probably know all about OBS, but is there anything recently that you may have been playing around with that that you find particularly useful or fun?
Let's see. That's a good question. My husband is actually and he's a software developer, and he's been developing tools, actually custom tools that I've been using. We're hoping to eventually be able to, put them on the market for other people. But
Ooh.
things with like, caption editing and making bulk changes to PowerPoint, things like that. So that is one of the advantages of having a software designer as your business partner is you can say, hey, I have this problem. Can you fix it? And he's like, yes, I can. So
Wow, and I was going to ask about that. What, I mean, for your company, what specifically does your husband do?
He his main wheelhouse is software development. So
Mhm.
kind of what we're planning is to have like a kind of a two departments, services, which is my side, and then products, which is his side. So It's kind of interesting in the fact that the services side is almost like a lab for the products development. So I can see if there is an opening, or like a need that's not being filled with current technology or whatever, and then we can strategize in terms of what we might be able to do to fill that gap.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
really, really interesting. I'm going to have to keep an eye on you. Yeah, just don't build an LMS. We've got too many of those out there.
Too many. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Now, you had mentioned you went to AIDC 21, our accessibility event. Why did you? Why were you interested in going to that particular event?
At the time, I was subcontracting with a company that had just started doing accessibility retrofits for some of their clients, and I knew nothing about accessibility, or very little. I mean, I knew enough to be proficient, but I was like, I need to learn more. And so I saw that TLDC had something on that, and it was really fascinating to hear perspectives, particularly from people who do have disabilities or have different abilities, and talking about their user experience with using tools that are or are not made with accessibility in mind. So I've kept that in mind as I've developed to try to be empathetic to people who have different needs and don't use the technology in the same way I do.
Yeah. No, definitely. That was a really eye-opening event for me as well, and I felt so honored that actually we're able to produce it at TLDC. Tomorrow we are actually having Bello Miguel Cipriani, who is blind, and he's going to be in and I'm just going to be talking with him about digital inclusion, and that's going to be tomorrow. So, tune into that one if you'd like to hear his perspective. He's really interesting because he came from a background of Silicon Valley. He was a Silicon Valley person, tech system admin, and then he lost his sight, and he kind of had to change up his career. So little pitch for tomorrow's event as well. All right. So if you weren't an L&D professional, what do you think you'd be?
Yeah. I think I'd probably be an ESL teacher, or, English as a second language. Before I started developing, full-time and became a full-time, L&D professional, I was teaching English as a second language online to Chinese students. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I love language. I might also have been a linguist, maybe, if I knew that was a thing. I might have been a comic book artist. I don't know. I like writing and drawing. I mean, if I had known about comic books back, or at least if I had been as immersed in it as I am now, there's a good chance I'd probably be at least trying to get in the comics industry, honestly.
No, that's great. Yeah, you are a geek.
Yeah.
No, I'm definitely, I'm the same side. There was at one point in my life, I sort of like, I want to draw comics. I want to draw comics, but but then I really got into writing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to write and draw comics, but instead here I am just hosting TLDC. So yeah,
Counts.
That's how it works. And let's see, tell me, like, is there anything what keeps you inspired? Like, as far as being an instructional design and a designer and L&D professional, is there something that inspires you to keep doing what you do, the kind of work you do?
Yeah. I think in the last 2 years, honestly, just seeing, how rapidly things are changing, and how much people are trying to figure out the world we live in. And what does that mean for our future? And, my husband and I have talked about this a lot, where, the future belongs to those who can adapt to it. And I feel that our role, is partly to help people adapt whether it's new software, new ways of thinking about your business, new ways of thinking about patient care, whatever it is. I think training and education is really a way to help people become adaptable. I used to work in a library for a short period of time. And one of my library directors said that libraries help people become overcomers. And I feel the same way about L&D. We help people overcome challenges, whether personal or professional, so that they can adapt and become successful in whatever world we end up, we find ourselves in.
Right. Right. No, that is wonderful. Thanks for that. Is that okay if I clip that one? I might have to clip that one and share it out.
Sure.
Because I haven't heard that before, and I totally agree. Especially with technology and just the pace of everything, the workplace, instructional designers definitely have a role in being able to help people get through that. Excellent. And last question, if there is one thing that people should know about you, what is it?
I think the main thing would probably be that I'm really an advocate for people who are thinking about owning their own business or start their own business. For me, business ownership has been just an amazing adventure. It's not always been, walk through the park, but I'm really proud of what I've built with my husband, and I'm very proud of the fact that I have created jobs. If no, if just for us, but it still counts. And I think we're in a position now, again, where things are changing and people are considering different ways of making a living and being in the world. I think that business ownership is a really empowering way to make a living and add value to your society and your community.
Wow. Is this something that you had considered prior to, I don't know, like, I mean, did you ever aspire to be a business owner, or was it kind of something that just popped up?
I kind of fell into no, actually, I kind of got pushed into it. I had never saw myself as a business owner before. I was very like, I'm going to work at a job and I'm going to just do what I'm told and it'll be fine. And then the library I worked at, they had some really big budget cuts, kind of happens. And but it was also, not exactly the best working culture. And I came out of that and I realized I'm basically unemployable. So what do I do now? And so I eventually had this realization that I don't really need permission to ask people to do what I know I can do and to contribute value. And so that kind of pushed me on the journey to thinking about, first freelancing. I was a freelancer to start with. And then gradually from that, being a business owner and starting an LLC.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that with us, Lisa. I think I should be basically clipping the last 10 minutes and posting that out there. Lisa was saying, clip that too, Luis. That was awesome. No, that's fantastic. Wow. Okay. Well, Bridget, thank you so much for sharing this time with us, answering all of these questions. I really appreciate it. It's so interesting having you on here, and of course, like being the first instructional designer that works in the cannabis industry. It'll be interesting to see if any more pop up. That alone is kind of a sort of perks people's ears, I think. At least I've gotten a couple messages about that anyway. So it's
Yeah.
very, very cool. So Bridget, thanks again. And everybody, tomorrow we've got Bello on. He is going to be talking about digital inclusion and accessibility. So join us. That's at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern broadcast. And with that, thanks everyone. Thanks again, Bridget.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.